They kicked him out for following his dream, but years later he returned as their landlord and tripled the rent. I was 22, trapped in a life that was slowly suffocating me. Every morning I woke up with this gnawing dread in my stomach, like something fundamental was out of place, and deep down, I knew exactly what it was. I wasn't supposed to be in the business program. I'd chosen it in high school because it made my parents happy, safe, predictable, a smart path. But every class felt like a chain tightening around my chest. I didn't care about profit margins or corporate strategy. My heart beat faster when I was coding, when I was solving problems that felt like puzzles, not products. I wanted to switch to computer science. I needed to. But in my house, needing something didn't matter unless it aligned with what my parents considered success. When I brought it up that first time, thinking maybe they'd understand, I barely got the words out before my dad shut it down. "You're not switching majors. You don't throw away your future for a hobby," he said, like I was some impulsive kid trying to become a DJ. My mom didn't even look up from her tablet, just nodded along like it was already settled. That was the first argument. From there, it spiraled. Every time I tried to bring it up again, it was like lighting a match in a room full of gasoline. They'd throw the same lines at me over and over. "We're paying for your education. You'll do what's best. You're lucky to even be in a good school. Do you think people actually make money programming?" I tried explaining that it wasn't about money. It was about feeling like I was doing something that mattered. But they never listened. They just talked louder. One night it got so bad my dad actually yelled, really yelled, like he was talking to a stranger, not his son. "If you don't want to be part of this family's future, then maybe you shouldn't be taking our support." That hit like a slap, even though I'd heard worse from him before. I didn't even argue. I just went back to my room, sat down at my desk, and stared at my code window until the lines blurred. It was the only place I felt like myself anymore. The pressure wasn't just from them. It was inside me, too. This crushing guilt for even wanting something different, this constant fear that maybe I was wrong, that maybe I'd regret giving up stability. But the thought of spending the rest of my life behind some corporate desk crunching numbers made me feel sick. I wanted to build things. I wanted to create, to solve, to learn. And I knew, even if they never accepted it, I had to make the change. Still, I haven't done it. Not yet. Because every time I open the course change portal, I hear my dad's voice in my head, loud and angry. I see the disappointment on my mom's face. And I freeze. Maybe one day I'll have the guts to finally hit submit. Until then, I code in secret, dream in silence, and live a life that doesn't feel like mine. I guess I always knew it would come to this, but that didn't make it any easier when the moment finally landed like a punch to the gut. We were standing in the living room, lights too bright, tension thick enough to slice through with a dull knife. My dad had that look on his face, the same one he wore when I used to get C's in middle school, disappointed but furious. He even had to explain why. My mom stood with her arms crossed like she was the judge and jury, lips pressed into that tight, disapproving line I'd seen since I was 12. I had just finished telling them that I couldn't keep doing the business program, that I had already emailed the department about switching to computer science, that I had to do this for myself because I couldn't breathe otherwise. They didn't shout this time. They didn't need to. My dad looked me square in the face and said, "You can either follow the path we're supporting or figure things out on your own. Those are your options." No debate. No discussion. Like I was being given a menu of consequences instead of a choice. My mom didn't even blink. She just turned and walked into the kitchen like the matter was settled. And I stood there, heart hammering, wondering how the hell it had come to this. But I didn't back down. For the first time in months, I didn't swallow it or nod along like I had every other time they pushed me into a corner. I just said, "Then I guess I'll figure it out." My dad didn't respond. He just gave this slow, disappointed nod, like he'd been waiting for this moment to confirm whatever story he'd been telling himself about me. Ungrateful, reckless, a failure in the making. The next morning, I woke up to a suitcase already packed at the foot of my bed. My laptop was inside, some clothes, a charger, and a few toiletries tossed in like an afterthought. My parents didn't say a word. My mom left a grocery bag with a few granola bars and $20 in cash on the kitchen table. My dad handed me the house key and said, "We'll be changing the locks this weekend." That was it. No hug, no goodbye, no emotion, just cold logistics, like I was an employee being let go at the end of a shift. I walked out of the house that day with no plan, no place to go, just the weight of a decision that had felt like freedom in theory, but hit like a gut punch in reality. The sun was too bright, the air too sharp. I kept waiting for one of them to call me back, to say they didn't mean it, that they loved me anyway, that we could figure this out. But all I got was the sound of the door closing behind me and the thud of finality it carried. I spent that night on a bench near campus, my hoodie pulled tight, pretending I wasn't cold, pretending I wasn't scared, pretending I hadn't just lost the only home I'd ever known. I kept telling myself I did the right thing, that choosing myself was worth it, that this was just the beginning. But all I could feel was the ache settling into my chest, the silence that followed, and the empty space where a family used to be. I crashed at my buddy Tyler's place after getting kicked out, but even calling it crashing felt too generous. It was a one-bedroom apartment that already felt cramped with just him and his girlfriend, and I was the added baggage no one asked for. The couch was stained and sagged in the middle, the kind that swallowed your spine by midnight and left you aching by dawn. I tried to be invisible, tiptoeing around in the mornings, folding up my blanket before anyone woke up, leaving before the coffee started brewing. But no matter how quiet I was, I could feel it. The shift in tone, the tired glances, the awkward silences when I walked into a room. I was overstaying my welcome from day one, but I had nowhere else to go. I picked up a job at this grimy little diner off the highway. They didn't ask many questions, which was perfect because I didn't have any good answers. I started on dishes, working nights, scrubbing off plates piled with dried eggs and crusted ketchup, burning my fingers on pans that never cooled. After a few weeks, they bumped me to busboy. Better money, less grease. Still hell. Every shift ended with my clothes smelling like fryer oil and stale coffee, my legs sore from standing 10 hours straight, my brain foggy from the heat and noise. I'd go back to Tyler's, shower fast, and pass out on the couch, only to wake up 3 hours later for my second job. Security at a warehouse downtown wasn't much better. Midnight to 6 a.m., patrolling empty lots and watching flickering security cams in a booth that barely had working heat. I sat in a plastic chair with one leg shorter than the others, sipping gas station coffee that tasted like burned cardboard, trying not to doze off. Some nights, I'd walk the perimeter in the cold just to stay awake, stuffing my hands in my pockets and praying no one was stupid enough to break in, because I didn't have the energy to deal with anything beyond breathing. School slipped through my fingers faster than I could grab at it. I missed classes constantly, showed up half asleep when I could, unshowered and hollow-eyed, nodding off during lectures or zoning out completely. I tried to keep up with assignments at first, but between double shifts, constant fatigue, and a brain that felt like it was running on fumes, I couldn't keep pace. My grades tanked. I got warning emails, then sit-down talks with professors who meant well but didn't get it. They told me to take a leave of absence, like I was some burnout who needed a break, not someone clawing for survival. The final straw came when my student account locked me out, tuition past due, no more extensions, no more grace. I withdrew without ceremony, just filled out the online form one night on Tyler's couch with a dead phone at my side and half a bag of pretzels for dinner. No diploma, no backup plan, just 2 dead-end jobs, a busted body, and a future that looked like a smudge on a fogged-up window. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd figure something out, but every morning felt heavier than the last. I wasn't living. I was just trying not to collapse under the weight of everything I'd lost. It was a Tuesday afternoon, one of those slow stretches between the lunch and dinner rush at the diner, and I was hunched in the corner booth with my busted old laptop, fingers moving on autopilot through lines of code I barely had the brain cells left to process. I'd gotten into the habit of sneaking in a bit of programming during my breaks, not for school, not for anyone else, just for me. It was the only thing that made me feel remotely human. I didn't even notice the guy watching until he slid into the booth across from me with a half-empty coffee in his hand and this curious look like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "What are you working on?" he asked, voice casual but direct, like he already knew it wasn't just some game or spreadsheet. I blinked, shoulders tensed, half expecting him to complain about the food or tell me I was taking up space. "Just some code," I muttered, minimizing the window, ready to pack up. "It's nothing. Doesn't look like nothing," he said, nodding toward the screen. "Python, right? That a recommendation engine you're building?" I froze, because he was right, and no one had ever bothered to ask, let alone recognize it. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, just messing around with some data sets." He leaned back, sipped his coffee. "You any good?" I shrugged. "I'm okay. Dropped out of school, so not much to show for it." He didn't flinch, didn't do that condescending thing people do when you say you left college. He just studied me for a second, then pulled out his phone and asked if I had a resume. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it felt absurd. I was wearing a stained apron and smelled like grease, living off 4 hours of sleep and vending machine dinners. The last resume I made was a template I hadn't touched since high school. He said, "I'm CTO at a small tech company uptown. We've got a junior dev position that's been open for months. No degree required. We care more about how you think than where you studied. Come by Thursday. Bring your laptop. Show me what you've built." I stared at him, waiting for the catch. But there wasn't one. He finished his coffee, dropped a 20 on the table for a $2 refill, and walked out like it was the most normal thing in the world to offer a stranger a shot at a new life. I sat there for a long time after he left, hands still hovering over my laptop, mind trying to make sense of what had just happened. It felt like someone had cracked open a window in a room I thought was sealed shut. For the first time in months, maybe longer, I felt something like hope claw its way up through the exhaustion. I didn't know if I could do it, didn't know if I even deserved it. But I knew I had to try. Because in that moment, in the corner booth of a greasy diner with nothing left to lose, someone finally saw something in me worth saving. The first few weeks at the company felt like walking on a tightrope suspended over everything I had barely managed to crawl out of. I showed up every day in thrifted slacks and a button-down that still smelled faintly of fryer grease, no matter how many times I washed it. I didn't know half the jargon they used in meetings, didn't understand the politics, the workflows, the culture, any of it. But I kept my head down, asked questions when I didn't know something, and made damn sure I never asked the same thing twice. During the day, I worked on whatever they threw at me, fixing bugs, writing scripts, testing functions that had been overlooked by bigger egos with bigger titles. At night, I taught myself everything I couldn't afford to learn before. Online tutorials, documentation, forums, YouTube deep dives. I devoured it all like my life depended on it because in a way, it did. I'd get home around 6:30, cook some instant ramen or eat whatever leftovers Tyler had in the fridge, then crack open my laptop and grind until 2 or 3 in the morning. Some nights I fell asleep in the middle of writing code, only to wake up with a cramp in my neck and my screen still glowing. I finally quit the security job after my third paycheck. It felt like cutting a weight loose from my ankle. The extra sleep alone made me feel like a new person. For the first time in months, I had one job, one focus, and it didn't involve dodging drunk college kids or pulling double shifts under fluorescent lights. I could breathe. I could think. I could finally see the outline of a future that wasn't just about surviving. My manager noticed. He pulled me into his office one afternoon after I'd quietly overhauled part of our back-end system that had been a mess for months. Said he'd seen how fast I learned, how I wasn't afraid to take on things outside my comfort zone. That kind of initiative sticks out, he told me. You've got something. They converted my contract to a full-time junior developer position the next week. Health insurance, paid time off, an actual desk with dual monitors, stuff I used to think was reserved for people with degrees and debt and connections. But I didn't celebrate. I didn't post about it or tell my parents or buy anything fancy. I just took a deep breath, opened my terminal, and got back to work. Because this wasn't the finish line. It wasn't even halfway, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. It still messes with my head sometimes. Waking up to sunlight pouring through the bedroom window of a place that doesn't smell like old takeout or burnt coffee. Reaching over to find her curled up beside me. Peaceful in a way I never thought I'd have again, not after everything. I roll out of bed, open my laptop, and check the morning dashboards, project statuses, revenue projections, open tickets from our devs, and it hits me every damn time. I built this. Not just the code or the product. The company. The team. The entire damn thing. It started as a side project. Just me and 2 guys I used to work with, grinding after hours, chasing an idea we all believed in more than sleep. We didn't even have a name for it at first, just a shared Google Drive folder and a group chat that never shut up. We coded like maniacs, broke everything, fixed it, broke it again. We launched messy, patched fast, and listened to every user like they were handing us gold. Eventually the product caught on. Word spread. Clients came in. So did revenue. I left my job 6 months later, scared out of my mind, but tired of asking permission to do things I already knew how to do better. I hired my co-founders full-time, then a designer, then support. We grew slow on purpose. I didn't want an empire. I wanted a place where people didn't dread Mondays, where no one got left behind, where good work got noticed and bad days didn't cost you your dignity. Now we've got an office downtown, small, but with big windows and plants that aren't fake. We're profitable. We've got real clients, real traction, real wins. I'm not rich, not in the way tech headlines throw around, but I'm stable in a way I didn't know was possible. I don't fall asleep hungry anymore. I don't flinch when my phone buzzes. And most days, I get to build cool stuff with people I trust, solving problems that actually matter. She and I are house hunting now. Every weekend we drive out to look at places, arguing about paint colors and kitchen islands, dreaming out loud in ways that used to feel off limits. We don't talk much about how far I've come, how far we've come, but it's there in every quiet moment. In every laugh, every shared plan, every night I go to bed without that pit in my stomach that used to feel permanent. I never expected to end up here. I just kept going. One line of code, one job, one break at a time. And somehow, somewhere along the way, I built a life that finally feels like mine. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't even thinking about that place anymore, not really. It had faded into that foggy part of my memory you only touch when you're half asleep or driving alone with the radio too low. But there it was, my old house, staring back at me from a real estate listing like some ghost daring me to flinch. Same red brick, same cracked walkway, same weather-worn shutters my dad always said he'd replace, but never did. I clicked the link without thinking, heart pounding harder than it had in years. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, asking price a little under market, probably because of the age. Motivated sellers. I didn't need to scroll to know who that meant. They were moving. Leaving behind the house they threw me out of like I was some failed prototype. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel anger. I felt this sharp, focused clarity. A pull in my chest that didn't come from bitterness, but from something colder, cleaner. I called my agent that afternoon. I didn't tell anyone. Not my girlfriend, not my business partner, not a soul. I moved fast, made a cash offer through a holding company, nothing flashy. I knew how to bury names and paperwork now. Knew how to make it all look like just another property transaction in a quiet neighborhood no one cared about. The seller never questioned it. Why would they? To them, I was just another buyer with the right numbers and no baggage. I closed 2 weeks later. When the keys hit my palm, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure dressed up as real estate. I didn't celebrate. I didn't pop champagne. I drove out there alone, parked across the street like a stranger, and stared at the porch where I used to sit with a scraped knee and a juice box, waiting for my dad to come home. The porch light was still that same harsh yellow. The mailbox still tilted just a little too far to the left. I stood at the front door with the key for a long time. Not because I was nervous, but because I wanted to feel it. The weight of the past meeting the life I'd built in spite of it. I opened the door, stepped inside, and breathed in the quiet. The air didn't smell like it used to. It smelled like nothing. Like it was waiting for me to decide what came next. They didn't know. They still don't. And maybe they never will. But I know. I own the house they cast me out of. I sleep easy now, not because I got revenge, but because I reclaimed something that was taken from me. On my terms, with no yelling, no pleading, no permission. Just a pen, a signature, and the calm, steady satisfaction of a door opening for me this time, not shutting in my face. I scheduled the meeting like it was just business because that's what it was now. No drama, no warnings. Just a date, a time, and an address they hadn't even realized they'd stopped owning. When they walked into the kitchen, the same one where they once told me to leave if I didn't follow their plan, my mom froze, her hand still clutching the worn leather of her purse strap. My dad scanned the table like he was expecting a landlord or a lawyer, someone older, someone official, someone not me. I didn't sit. I kept my posture calm, my words measured, because this wasn't revenge. This was structure. I laid out the new terms like I would in any business negotiation. Effective next month, rent would increase to match market rate. Technically just under triple what they were paying now. No threats, no emotion. Just a printed contract and a pen. My dad didn't speak at first. He just stared at the paper, the numbers, the signature line already filled in with my name. My mom blinked hard like she'd misheard, like she was waiting for me to say just kidding. I didn't. Because I wasn't. When my father finally spoke, it wasn't anger. It was something quieter, rawer. You bought this house? He asked, voice low. I nodded once. A while ago. Through a holding company. I didn't explain why. Didn't tell them about the night I stood outside the front door with a key and 10 years of silence between us. Didn't tell them about the couch I slept on, the jobs I worked, the part where I could have died without them ever knowing or caring. That wasn't their business anymore. What mattered was this. Me standing in the kitchen of the house they used to own, not to punish them, but to remind myself that I made it. That I survived. That I built something out of the wreckage they left me in. My mom finally sat down, like her legs gave out under the weight of it all. Why are you doing this? She asked, but not like a challenge. More like someone realizing they'd miscalculated something fundamental. Because it's fair, I said, and meant it. Because I don't need to prove anything to you. Because this is who I am now, whether you understand it or not. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I just left the papers on the table and walked out, the soft creak of the door behind me the only sound that followed. Outside, the sun was starting to dip behind the trees, casting long shadows over the sidewalk I used to ride my bike on, back when I still thought love meant being seen.